my name is Mbweha, but you can call me Ben, of Team Relentless, and this is the Playbook, where I teach you how to do something very specific in Star Wars Legion a little bit betterer than maybe you already do it. Today we're talking about Death Troopers. Imperial Death Troopers are an incredibly strong unit. They have a whopping 2/3 chance to block every incoming damage and put out attack pools that regularly deal more than 5 damage. With dice pools that good, you can play this unit like a freshly promoted Gungan general and still come out on top. But playing them to their maximum potential? That's what we're here to talk about right now. Wowzer, this unit has a lot of upgrade slots, so we better get started with number 1. Upgrades. There are 2 must-have upgrades for the Death Troopers. They are the DLT-19D Trooper and the E11D Focus Fire config. Quick side note about the config. You decide when you deploy the unit which side of the upgrade to use. But with the Death Troopers, you're going to use the E11D Focus Fire about 98.5% of the time. I did the math. So yeah, if you're not running the DLT and the config upgrades, you're almost certainly doing it wrong. In addition to those 2, you should almost always include Recon Intel. Why? Taking Recon Intel often allows you to set up your first shot during deployment, which is A+ super good times. If you really need those 2 points somewhere else, you can get by without it, but include it if you can. Lastly, consider taking the following 2 upgrades. Hunter, to generate more aims on a unit that rerolls 4 dice every time they spend an aim token, and Comms Relay, so you can toss your order from Krennic's entourage onto a unit that normally couldn't get it. Now that you've kitted out your Death Troopers, let's talk about number 2, Army Building. Okay, this is the absolute most straightforward thing about Death Troopers. Bring at least 1 Medbot, preferably 2. And almost always bring Krennic for his entourage ability. Fun fact about entourage, it's normally range 1 to 2, but if you use commanding presence, it's boosted out to range 4, which is a lot. Check the description for a couple of my favorite lists that include Death Troopers. Number 3, opening strategy. So there is an absolute best opening strategy for Death Troopers. It is to deploy them probably last, by the way, so that they start the game in heavy cover with a range 4 shot. Get them in order on turn 1, either via entourage or your command card, and then activate them first. Aim and shoot using your focus fire config. Odds are you just dealt out 2 suppression and 5 hits with your opening shot. If your jaw didn't just drop, think about how excited people get about playing maximum firepower on turn 1. With a perfect rollout, that's 1 suppression and 4 hits. So you fired right away on purpose because you're actually hoping your opponent will sink a whole bunch of shots into those Death Troopers. Think about it, you're range 4 from the nearest enemy. So your opponent is going to need to move and shoot if they're going to fire back, so they probably won't have aim tokens. And you put them in heavy, so just cancel 2 hits automatically from every attack pool. Plus, they have a 2/3 save. And you have medics to reanimate the dead. Plus, those shots into your DTs aren't putting suppression onto your unactivated units, making their later activations much more efficient. The one exception to this is snipers, because they'll just pierce your super good saves and murder you anyway. But that's why you brought necromancers. Medbots. And I don't know, maybe you were able to deploy out of line of sight from a couple of the snipers because you're good at this game and stuff. Number 4, what weapon do I use? Okay, so this is far more complicated than I wish it was. For the sake of time, I'm just going to tell you what the best choice is for average hit output. I'm not really going to explain why each choice is best, but I am going to post a link in the description to the numbers I'm working with. If you have questions about this section, don't hesitate to ask in the comments. I will answer. Oh yeah, last thing for this section. The DLT always shoots its 2 red, 1 white. So when we're talking about choices for weapons, we just mean for the other minis. If you're at range 4, refresh your focus fire config, or aim if your focus fire config is already up, and fire. If you're at range 1 to 2 and there is any cover at all, refresh your grenade launcher and fire, or aim and fire your grenade launcher if it was already ready. However, if you're at range 1 to 2 and your target has no cover, it's actually better to aim and shoot with your pistols. Alright, range 3 is the tricky one. At range 3, if your grenade launcher is ready, you should move and shoot. If your grenade launcher isn't ready, it's only better to move and shoot with your pistols if it would take the target from heavy cover to no cover. Otherwise, just aim and shoot with the regular rifle. So disclaimer, what I just said isn't true if you have 2 or more aim tokens. If you have 2 or more aim tokens, it's almost always better to fire your pistols. In fact, firing with your pistols is so good that if you have 2 or more aim tokens and access to your grenade launcher, you should only use 1 mini to fire the grenade launcher so that the blast keyword removes cover. Bonus! A few extra notes for your consideration. The shoot first in turn 1 strategy is not going to work on Long March, so don't include it in your battle deck and probably veto it if you can. If you do end up playing it though, basically implement the same strategy, just on turn 2. But be sure to not do anything stupid on turn 1 that somehow gets your Death Troopers shot at a bunch. Krennic's 2-pip gives standbys. Standbys give aim to Death Troopers. Aims make Death Troopers insanely good. Do the math. If you want to double down on this unit, you can do so by running 2 Death Troopers, duh. Or you could get a little crazy and do something like run Emperor Palpatine and use pull the strings to fire twice with them. But like, who would do something crazy like that? See the link in the description. Don't forget Disciplined 1. I literally forgot Disciplined 1 while I was writing this script until the day before I shot. It's super good. Remember it like Coco remembers her dead father. Remember that Death Troopers really aren't that good at shooting into armor. They don't surge to crit, they only have impact 1, and that's basically the exact same thing as a DLT Stormy group. If you have a choice between shooting at armor and shooting at squishy troopers, squish squish. Last bonus tip. Speaking of shooting, remember that in the late game, shooting is not always the best choice. It might actually be best to just double move and tie an enemy unit up in melee, or to move out of range of an enemy shot depending on how the victory points stand. As my teammate says, win without rolling. Summary. Let's review. Number 1, always bring the DLT and focus fire config upgrades. Number 2, always bring some soulless reanimators, and probably Krennic. Number 3, get into heavy cover and start firing as soon as possible. And number 4, stay put at range 4, use the grenade launcher at range 1 to 2, and at range 3, move shoot with the grenade launcher, move shoot into the open with pistols, or aim and fire with your rifle at range 3. Now you know how to play Death Troopers more better. Probably. Remember to check the description for some sample lists and the pew-pew data. Feel free to ask questions in the comment, like the video if you did, and subscribe if you're into that sort of thing. I'm Mbweha, you can call me Ben from Team Relentless, and this has been the Playbook, Death Trooper.